Okay, so everybody, this is video number 23. I'm just going to talk about my grid, actually, just how we can, um, how everything's synthesized, from the grid, and how we can get meaning from, deeper meaning from everything that we put within the grid. Anyway, so I'll just get into it. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about yet, but I got an idea. So this is the grid, and let's call this looking at it as a times table meaning. Let's call it times table meaning. What does that mean? Well, okay, so I got this idea for a grid, right? And I got 81 locations here. This is 9, but each one's going to divide into 9 here, like this. Now, I've been playing with this idea, but now I'm kind of starting to move forward with it, because I've been thinking about this for decades, let's say here. Actually, probably when I was, like a kid in grade 7 or 5, or probably even earlier. I was always thinking about, as I said before, the mind and exploring the mind and thoughts and ideas and stuff like that. So I'm making a grid right now that I'm kind of playing with and experimenting with and seeing what works and what doesn't, right? So I'm kind of this is gonna be one deck, in this location here. This is like a master deck, 81 decks of 81 cards, right? So this is the first one. Now I kind of have like an idea, like a very vague vision of what will work, and I'm kind of putting together some cards. After I do this one, I'll have like a better idea of how to do the second one, right? I'll get a clearer vision of what actually works and what doesn't, and how I want to change things, right? After I do this one, I imagine the next one I do, well, I'll even have a more defined idea of how to make the next grid, right? I imagine by the time I get to this last grid, like I've done this like over 80 times now in this 81 deck here, when I put together 81 cards for this last deck, I imagine from going from here when I started to here will be vastly different, right? And kind of like, if you kind of have a vision that you just want to be better, but you can't really define what that's going to look like exactly, you just start taking a step in that direction, and everything kind of looks hazy and cloudy, and you can't really see what the destination is going to look like. But as you get closer to it, where you're actually getting to is more defined, because as you start to change, you start to see more, and you can start to define more, and the vision not only gets clearer, but your ability to see also gets clearer too, because as you progress, the progression gets you to a place where, in the process of going into that, down that journey, is is changes you, and you become a person with new eyes, right? There's a quote, I'm not sure if it applies, but it's kind of like, it's never like new destinations that we see, but we see with new eyes, or new destinations, or just seeing the same thing with new eyes. Anyways, I don't want to butcher the quote that I can't remember at the moment, but I'll put it in the description, or somebody just write it down. Oh, thanks for all the comments. I haven't commented on any comments yet, but I appreciate all the comments. I'll say that. So yeah, I'm making a grid, and I'm kind of seeing what works for memory and for application and stuff. What I found is in this grid, I want to kind of see the grid as a part of who I am. So I kind of picture the grid as a box that is a part of me. If I was a person that was made from the grid, and the grid was part of me, and that was my body, then that grid is something that I can imaginarily always take with me as part of my self-image, right? And then everything that is contained within that grid, the symbols and the goals and the analogies and stuff, is part of who I am, right? So I want to see it as that. And then also when I'm focusing on, let's say here I have on my grid, it's for vision and music, and envisioning what I want to be like, and I also I do that while I'm on my elliptical there, just working out, which I was just doing. So when I'm working out on my elliptical, I picture myself in this location. If I was in like a big house or a building that was like contained with this grid, I see myself up here in the upper room with far left. I kind of see myself in that position, and I'm working out in that location, right? In an imaginary building. I see myself in that location. Now that would feel different than if I imagined myself over here or over here. If you were in a building, you kind of get a sense of where you are, and feel where you are. It has a certain feeling to it, for the location. And that's kind of what I identify with. I see myself kind of imaginary in this imaginary grid in that location. And that feels different and then if I was in a different part of the grid. So that's part of the memory kind of thing, and giving each location its own sense of feeling and identity and sense of where you are, right, in this mental map kind of thing, right? So I was doing that, and then also what I was trying to do, like right now I'm just reviewing where the symbols, where the locations of the symbols are, and then I was practicing like, what I want to be able to do is practice asking myself what's in this location and then be able to come up with the image, right? Right now I'm doing the easier one, which is to take the look at the image and then remember where it goes, which I'm getting fairly good at now just because I practiced it a few times, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And then that's going to integrate it, right? And then I was taking each symbol and I was saying, how does this apply? If I remember it, great. But what's the point of remembering it unless it can apply to my life? So I take the symbol and I say, like, if I was actually applying this right now in daily life, how would it look? What would it look like if I was applying this, right? And I see myself applying that and seeing what difference it would make. And then when I'm out of my daytime and the opportunity does come to apply any one of these things, I can already, pre-imagined me acting from these analogies, and I'll kind of go into this more. It'll make more sense when I keep explaining my grid, and it'll remind me that I'm doing this activity right now, right? It'll remind me that right now I'm practicing this, right? And then another situation happens in life and it goes, oh, this is my opportunity to integrate and practice this, right? All these things, right? Just come to mind naturally. I'm not trying to consciously remember any of this. I'm just going along my daily life, and because I practice this in the morning, maybe at lunch, maybe in the evening, kind of, periodically, so that it's always kind of, on my mind, so I'm ready. Just like a martial artist practices once a day, they go to class and then practice, so it just becomes automatic if they need any of their skills. I just practice kind of, what I want in my memory on a subconscious level, become habit, so I automatically just think of it and respond and react. Same sort of thing, like we don't need to consciously review how to drive a car. We already know how to do it, and we just automatically respond as we need it automatically, right? So I want to create the grid, the vision of how I want to be, how I want to react, and just act on that. So anyways, kind of getting off track, but I take each symbol and then I say, how does this relate to this symbol, right? Because sometimes some of these symbols, they're kind of like saying the same thing, but a little bit different definition. And then I can kind of see how this symbol means the same sort of thing as this symbol, but it's just defining a different aspect of it. So I'll show you examples of that. I just kind of want to share some things while they're on my mind. I'll go back and later, do videos describing exactly what I'm talking about so you can see, right? So anyways, I'll some things are automatically, will connect. I take this one, and it kind of gives a more precise definition of how each one can be more utilized, like how this makes this work better and how this makes that work better. And if we do it, ask ourselves how any one symbol relates to every single other symbol. It gives us like insights that we never thought about before, right? If we think of how does this apply to anything else that we're doing, when you take two ideas and you say, what's the similarities, or how does this make this better, or what can we learn when we join this idea and that idea? It's like an exercise that really helps us think about how everything that we integrate in our life, how this goal is connected to this goal. If we become better in this, we, just like everything like the last video I was doing, like if our finances are good, then, it's going to affect everything else. Our relationships can be better, our food, our health from our food can be better. Take any one thing and it'll make a positive impact on every other area of life that we're trying to do, right? If you have one thing fall apart, like let's say you lose your job, it's going to start impacting all your other areas too, right? Everything's synergetic and everything works together. So we kind of want to what I was practicing doing is saying, how does this relate to that? How does it relate to that? How does it relate to that? And then see myself as doing that, envisioning that, and prior to actually needing it, right? Kind of practice seeing myself, applying the idea, the situation before the daily situation. Because in life, I mean, only so many things go on in your daily life where you may or may not use any given thing that you're trying to remember. But if you can't kind of practice things daily, it's not really going to become a habit, in your mind. So that's why I use cards. So I just kind of practice going over what the situation is, the scenario, and then I practice how I'd want to respond and kind of try to make it a mental habit by giving myself the opportunity to respond to a situation that I want to remember to make a habit, instead of trying to just remember to apply something in a given day out of the blue when I'm not prepared for it, and it doesn't happen frequent enough to kind of drill down that as a habit, right? So many things apply. One was, this concept of, our, having a pause right before we act, before we do something, just having that moment of pause, which is our power, the moment of power to be able to consciously choose how we want to respond to something, consciously, until it becomes habit and we start to react in a positive way, habit-wise. That pause is applicable to so many other things. Like I have one thing to not, to just, before you speak, think before you speak, but just just to listen without speaking, right? And the pause and just listening without speaking really go hand in hand, because if you listen without speaking, you just kind of have to pause and just practice. Just before you're ready to blurt out something, practice pausing and before you do that, right? It's synergetic, right? Like, so a lot of things I want to remember are work together, because you need the pause to do a lot of things that you'd otherwise just haven't become habit yet, and you haven't become conscious yet. You can use it for so many things, and that's just what I'm doing. I'm just practicing making a grid. I'm going to make cards for a grid. I'm going to start to also right now it's just I'm throwing ideas down randomly, but I want to coordinate everything into categories so it's all applicable. When I think of finances, I think of all the things I want to remember for finances. I think of nutrition, I think of all the things I want to remember for nutrition. Relationships, all the things I want to remember for relationships. Have it all categorized, right, and organized and stuff, so that I'm very clear on what I want and how everything that I do in life has a common goal and a common direction towards one objective that I think about. And I'm going to make a deck of cards. Oh, my pen's almost out. A deck of cards where I just focus on this one card, and this breaks down into all these other categories, these other cards, and each one starts breaking down. And like I showed you on that Bible breakdown thing of how I was breaking down the books and on cards, this is a part of that, this is a part of that, and so forth, and then this is a part of that. Everything just kind of keeps building up towards one objective, and it's kind of like you just have to remember the one thing you want to remember, and this one thing contains everything else that makes it up, right? It's kind of like remembering just one picture. If a book was everything, all the information of a book was translated into one picture you could remember, then you could have the one picture on one card, and you just remember that one picture, and you remember all the contents of the book, basically, all on one page. You can see all of it like a map, all on one page, right? You can see all the city just laid out in one map. You see it all at once. You want to put a book on like a map kind of thing and lay it out so that it's basically just think of the one idea, and you can go anywhere in your mind of any chapter and break it down in your mind. What every chapter is consisted of, right? And every book, whatever the paragraphs that make up the chapters, and the sentences that make up the paragraphs, and the chapters that make up the book, and and if you have a series of books, the books that make up a category, a library and stuff. It's all just broken down, and if I put it on cards, like I was talking before, put on a map, something that you can take apart, put back together, take apart, put back together. It becomes permanent in your mind. If you see yourself acting from that, you can integrate habits that you otherwise, would just need to wait for the thing to happen during the day. You can just practice it, practice your responses the same way that people that practice martial arts practice their responses over and over again until it becomes conditioned, right? So that's kind of what I want to do with the grid times table meaning. Why I put times table in there is just because I had, it's, how does this relate to that, right? And how does this relate to that? It's kind of like, then you come up with new ideas, right? That were synergetically more as, putting ideas together than either idea was by itself. So kind of like a grid times table meaning type exercise there, right? And then to see yourself utilizing that and becoming that, and this grid helps, as being part of your body, imaginarily helps to integrate it, and it becomes, something you think about in your conscious mind. It drops down into your subconscious, so you just live from that as a habit. So anyways, that's my idea on the video 23, the grid times table meaning objective. Thanks.